Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Kamper Report. It has been over 2 weeks since I have went live, so I'm excited. I'm excited to be back. I'm a little bit late, about 15 minutes late. Had to reschedule a few more times. I was going to do it earlier today, then kind of uh, life got to me, and I had to reschedule till the night. But we are here, and we're back. First live in over 2 weeks. I promise I'll be going live more often. I will be going live again later on this week to kind of break down a little bit more of the Niners game and give you a little bit more Niners topics. But today will be a lot of NFL, and then probably sometime this week, I'll be making just a video, not a live, but a video of kind of all the coaches getting fired and all of what that means there. And there's, I mean, this past week, probably of all the time that I've covered the NFL, is probably the most, I wouldn't say, this past week has been the most news that has come out since I've started covering the NFL. But there was a lot of news that came out this past week, like tons. Coaches getting fired, teams losing that weren't expected to lose, like the Cowboys losing the Green Bay Packers, first 7 seed to win a playoff game in history. Which obviously, I guess the 7th seed has only been in play for about a few years. So I guess that's not super impressive, but nevertheless, there were teams that lost that shouldn't have lost this past week. There was coaches getting fired. There's coaches that probably will get fired. A lot of speculation where Bill Belichick will go. A lot of speculation where maybe Mike Vrabel will go. So there's a lot to talk about, but we're gonna kind of we're going to take all of that NFL news and we're going to try to cover it as much as we can today because, I'm not Superman. I cannot cover it all, but we'll try to get everything that I can. And if you guys have any questions for me, pop them in the comments and we'll get it going. Real quick, I just need to change my background here. There we go. And boom. Okay. So I'm trying to figure out, first thing, we have a guy in the comments already, Carcast 49ers Talk, says, yo, how was Australia? Australia was great. Got to see a lot of new things, got to see a lot of things that maybe animals and different, I guess, tourist attractions that you wouldn't see in America because, for example, I don't think there's as many caves here in America as there is in Australia. We got to see a place with a huge cave, like just a bunch of caves in Australia. So that was really cool. There was a bunch of animals that obviously don't exist here. So it was really cool. Australia was great. But enough of the Australia talk. Let's get to the NFL talk. Now, I think that is this my notebook right here? Okay. So I'm right now. So if you guys cover the NFL, you know that as a person covering the NFL, you go through a lot of notebooks. So I'm going through a notebook like once every 2 months. So right now I'm in between notebooks. And so half of my notes are on this notebook, and then half of them are on a new notebook. So it's like I'm kind of like scrambling to find out which topic that I will have will be on which notebook, if you guys know what I mean. So I'm kind of just like, it's going to be a definitely interesting show today. But let's start off with the title of the show, Kyle Shanahan, why the 49ers are lucky to have him, and kind of because the Eagles lost last night, kind of in embarrassing fashion. And in a way, it was a little bit of a surprise for me because I did expect the Eagles to lose. Well, I didn't expect them. I just thought that out of everyone in the playoffs, out of every team in the playoffs, the Buccaneers were probably the easiest, the best possible matchup the Eagles could have faced, right? And so I was thinking, if there's anyone that the Eagles can beat, it's the Buccaneers, and they're playing them this week. So when the Eagles lost, I was like, okay, yeah, they've been playing bad, and they've been a terrible team the last 6 weeks. But, I mean, I didn't expect them to be this bad, And so it kind of made me come to a realization. Why have the Eagles been doing so bad lately? And why have they had certain problems all year? For example, the complexity of the offense has been lacking this whole entire year. The defense, just especially in the second level, does not show discipline to tackle or anything for the Eagles. So I kind of was thinking about how this whole season the Eagles have had major issues. And what is the big reason why? Well, and a big reason why, you talk to any Eagles fan, it's because they had a lot of coaching turnover after their Super Bowl year last year. And most notable, the names that left the Eagles to go be head coaches were Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon, two very good coaches. Well, Jonathan Gannon, not as much, but sorry, needed a drink there. Jonathan Gannon definitely was hated by a lot of Eagles fans, but he's doing good things in Arizona. So, and Shane Steichen obviously almost made the playoffs with the Colts and a backup quarterback, right? And so those two coaches have gone off and are head coaches of different teams, Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon, and they're doing very well. They're showing progress with those teams. And meanwhile, you have the Eagles, who are not as good as they were last year. And now it's starting to, it's become more and more apparent, and now is very clear that they are missing those two guys, Jonathan Gannon and Shane Steichen. Now, what makes NFL organizations so good, and NFL coaches in general, I was telling my dad this yesterday, NFL coaches in general so good, is when they lose a coach under them to let's say, okay, when, like Kyle Shanahan lost DeMeco Ryans to a head coaching job with the Texans. When coaches lose people under them, when people under them go to another team and accept a higher coaching position or more money, and they lose coaching personnel, good coaches are able to replace that coaching personnel, are able to scout coaches and replace that certain coach that they have on their coaching staff. Head coaches are able to replace those coaches with even better coaches, right? And that's what Kyle Shanahan has been able to do. We saw, especially on the defensive end of things, Robert Saleh. Okay, Kyle Shanahan does the right move, promotes from within, gets DeMeco Ryans. DeMeco Ryans leaves. Kyle Shanahan looks elsewhere, but he looks to a veteran that has been doing the defense for a long time. That is Steve Wilks. And that was a good move. So part of your abilities as a head coach is how well do you scout coaching talent? How well are you at replacing coaches that you have lost? And I think the big problem with the Eagles, it's taken me a few minutes to kind of come to this climax, but the big problem with the Eagles is I don't think Nick Sirianni did a well enough job of replacing the loss of his offensive and defensive coordinator. And he replaced them with two terrible coordinators, Brian Johnston and Sean Desai, and then later on Matt Patricia, who I don't know why he did that. Midway through the season, replaced Sean Desai with Matt Patricia. So that is what separates the Niners or Kyle Shanahan compared to Nick Sirianni. Kyle Shanahan has proven that he can replace the coaches he has lost with more good coaches. Nick Sirianni this year proved that maybe he's not so good at scouting new coaching talent, if you guys know what I mean. So that's why the 49ers are lucky to have Kyle Shanahan, because he has an eye for talent on his coaching staff. He's good at that type of stuff. And if you want to be a successful team for 5, 6, 7 years, you need to have that trait as a head coach. And that is why, and there's really only 5 coaches in the NFL that are good at scouting other coaches. There's only 5. I think there's really only 5 good head coaches that are good at scouting coaching personnel and hiring the right dudes. And I think one of them is Kyle Shanahan. So the Niners are lucky. And that's kind of what the Eagles' loss last night showed me is how Kyle Shanahan, for so many years in a row now, we've been for 3 years straight, 4 years straight, have been really good. And that is because we've been able to replace the talent that we've lost with even more talent on our coaching staff. And maybe that's why the Eagles aren't doing so well this year, is because they haven't been able to do that. So Tommy Huxley here says, "What's up, kid?" It's nice to see you, Tommy, in the chat. But that's kind of the rant that I went on. But we have to get to another topic because I don't want to bore you guys too much with my Niners talk. Although a lot of you are Niners fans, so maybe you're not bored. But we're gonna get to a topic that I think even Niners fans would be kind of intrigued by, because CJ Stroud is obviously the quarterback of our beloved DeMeco Ryans, who every Niners fan loves, I'd assume. So I think every Niners fan kind of is watching what CJ Stroud is doing this year and how it's impressive, because CJ Stroud is obviously the quarterback of a coach, DeMeco Ryans, that every Niners fan used to love. And so I think a lot of you guys are watching what CJ Stroud is doing. And I think a lot of you guys are watching what Jordan Love is doing. And I can show you guys the screenshot. So there was this guy in my fantasy football group chat the other day. Let's see here. Fantasy football group chat the other day. And he asked a question: which is the better story, right? Which is the better story? CJ Stroud? Who's the story? Jordan Love? And I at first responded, and so I thought that this would be a good topic to bring on the show. CJ Stroud or Jordan Love? Which one is the better story? You have CJ Stroud, a rookie who is coming into a situation that the whole Texans team was rebuilding. He didn't seem to have a lot of talent at the beginning of the year. His offensive line is not good. I actually have that pulled up here. His offensive line, CJ Stroud's offensive line, you have obviously at left tackle Laramie Tunsil. At left guard, you have Scruggs. I can't remember his first name. Hold on. Juice Scruggs. And he has a 51 PFF grade, which is which is 65th amongst all guards in PFF. So that's not very good. You have the center for the Texans, Dieter, 57.9 PFF grade, which is 26th among all centers. So that's not good. You have their right guard, Mason, who's a 65.9 PFF grade. That's 23rd among all guards, which isn't great either. And then you have right tackle, let's see here, right tackle George Fant, who has a 63.3 PFF grade, which is ranked 51st among all tackles. So not a very good offensive line. And the talent to start the year wasn't great. And even right now, I mean, it's good, but it's not great. So CJ Stroud has done, as a rookie, amazing things with not the greatest talent. On the other hand, you have Jordan Love, who had a lot of pressure on his shoulders. He's replacing an all-time great quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. And not a lot of the Packers organization was believing, not a lot of the Packers fans was believing that he was the guy. A lot of Packers fans were saying, this is a big rebuild year. We're a 6-win team, and Jordan Love turns that around, wins 9 games, I believe it was, upsets the Cowboys in the playoffs and makes it to the second round of the playoffs. So that's also a very impressive story. Jordan Love taking all the pressure and starting off slow at the first half of the year, but really finishing off strong in the second half of the year. I believe it was 21 TDs in 10 games and 1 interception in 10 games. So ending off the year on an amazing note, Jordan Love. So which one is the better story, right? In my humble opinion, at first I was saying CJ Stroud, he's the better story. What he's done is more impressive than what Jordan Love has done. But now I'm going to say Jordan Love is the better story, because I think anytime you have to replace a all-time great quarterback and you have all this pressure on your shoulders, it's hard. It's hard. And what Jordan Love was able to do is, I think, the hardest thing. Overcoming adversity, overcoming pressure, overcoming adversity, the pressure to perform. CJ Stroud, on the other hand, it's like he didn't have a ton of pressure this year. He could have struggled, but he didn't. He didn't. But the thing is both guys have their own situations. Because yes, I think Jordan Love is the better story, but I also think it's very close between these two individuals. Both of them did extremely well. It's really hard to choose who's been more impressive this year, because I think Jordan Love has more talent on the skill position wise than CJ Stroud does. Obviously CJ Stroud has Nico Collins, but Jordan Love has, Christian Watson and Jaden Reed, and both of those guys are pretty good as well. And then I'm just looking at my notes real quick. I mean, it goes both ways. So it's like, I don't think CJ Stroud, and obviously Jordan Love has Aaron Jones, who's a very good running back, who's better than any running back on the Texans team. So I think Jordan Love offensively has maybe a little bit more talent than CJ Stroud, but both guys have really impressed this year. So I'm going to say Jordan Love is the better story, but CJ Stroud, what he's been doing with arguably less talent than Jordan Love, is definitely impressive for sure. Both QBs do not have great offensive lines, though. I will say that. Green Bay's offensive line, on the other hand, I mean, it's like their offensive line isn't super good either, especially the middle of their offensive line. Their center, Myers, 55.1 PFF grade, and their right guard, Runyon, has a 55.5 PFF grade, which are both... Myers is ranked 29th out of all centers in the league. So he's a not great center. And then Runyon is ranked 50th out of all guards in the National Football League. So not a great offensive line for the Packers. And then obviously, as I said before, not a great offensive line for the Texans. So that's that. Let me know what you guys think is, who you guys think is the better story. But here's another topic. So we obviously know that the Cowboys lost in embarrassing fashion, like the Cowboys always would. And I will say this before I get to this topic about Dak Prescott. As soon as the Cowboys lost, and I don't know if you guys relate to this, but as soon as the Cowboys lost, every single Cowboys fan I knew went into hiding. I mean, I texted a few of my Cowboys friends. I was like, what happened? And none of them responded. None of them responded at all. It was incredible. Really. It really was. And so, yeah, it's just funny how they were talking all this shit for a lot of the season. The Cowboys were so hyped up for a lot of the season, and then all of a sudden they lose, and every single Cowboys fan is now gone. So that was kind of just funny to me. But let's get to the topic. A report came out that Dak was getting an extension. I don't know if you guys saw this, but Dak Prescott is getting a contract extension. Well, potentially. They're trying to work out a multi-year contract extension worth over $40 million per year, or was it over $50 million per year? Something like that. So a massive contract extension the Cowboys and him are expected to agree upon. a contract extension. Is that justifiable? And this is kind of an interesting topic to me, because it's like, he just had a terrible game against the Packers. And I know at face value, it's like 41 for 60. He wasn't like awful as far as the completion percentage goes, but you also have to consider the fact that he did throw a pick six, and he missed some key throws early in that game that kind of that were very key. So not great. But I just wanted to kind of come on here and talk about how yes and no, he deserves this contract extension. And I'll tell you, so first I'm going to start with no, he does not deserve this contract extension. Obviously, as you guys know, a great regular season QB, was an MVP candidate this year. But I want to bring up the last two playoff performances. 2023 playoffs versus the Niners. You guys, Niners fans, remember that well. 23 for 37, 206 yards, 1 TD, 2 interceptions. Was not good in that game. If any of you guys watched that, Dak last year in the playoffs versus the Niners was terrible. I remember one interception. He threw it right to Fred Warner, right over the middle, about 6 yards away. It was in the red zone, just right to Fred Warner. Was not good in that game. 2024 versus the Packers. You guys know what it was. 41 for 60, 403 yards, 3 TDs, 2 interceptions. And then obviously, like I said before, 1 pick six. He had 400 yards passing, but they were basically passing the ball the whole entire game because they had to. They were down the whole entire game. Against good defenses in this last season, against good defenses. The Niners, week 5, I believe it was, 14 for 24, 153 yards, 1 TD, 3 interceptions. We all know that he was terrible in that game. The Jets defense, that was in week 2. He played the Jets defense. He did have a 70.4 PFF grade and was also 31 for 38 with no turnovers. So he was good in that game versus the Jets in week 2, and they have a good defense. So I'll give him that. In week 15, I believe it was week 15 versus the Bills. This was by far probably his worst game of the season. 39.4 PFF grade, which is like one of the lowest grades you can get. 21 attempts, 34 attempts. So, yeah, 34 attempts, 21 completions, and 1 interception. But you also have to realize that he had a 3.9 yards per attempt average. So, yes, he was 21 for 34 versus the Bills, but they also got blown out in that game in week 15. And he also had a 3.9 yards per attempt average. So, was not good in that game either. And those were kind of like when I was looking through the schedule and kind of just picking out the good defenses that he played. And he didn't play a ton. But he did play the Niners, Jets, Bills. I guess you could throw the Seahawks maybe in there as a good defense, and the Eagles maybe in there as a good defense. And he had good games against those two teams. But, I mean, okay, so those are the bad performances that he had this last year. He also had some good games as well. Like I said, he had a really good game against Miami. I don't know if you guys watched that game. I believe it was week 16 against the Miami Dolphins. And he was great in that game. He was really good. I was impressed. So he had some good and bad games this year, but primarily against the majority of good defenses, Dak Prescott crumbled. Now, maybe, and see, this is where I give him the benefit of the doubt, because I think part of the reason why he was so bad this year, or not so bad, he was good because he was an MVP candidate, but why he was not as good against good defensive teams was maybe the coaching of Mike McCarthy was not as good. And so if you're Jerry, wasn't helping Dak. He wasn't helping Dak. So maybe if you're Jerry Jones, you're looking at Dak Prescott, and can we all agree that I'd say he's a top 10 quarterback, right? Like maybe. So if you're Jerry Jones and you're saying, okay, Mike McCarthy can go, but we potentially have a top 10 quarterback in Dak Prescott. And if we bring in a coach that is better than Mike McCarthy, that can get the best out of Dak Prescott, that can run the offense more efficiently, then maybe Dak Prescott can be a better quarterback in the playoffs and in bigger spotlights. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Part of the reason why I think he's not really shown up in the biggest times is because the coaching of Mike McCarthy, I think we all know, is terrible. So I think to answer the question, is the contract justifiable? Does he deserve a contract extension? Yes and no. So Philip Sellers coming in here. It's been, I believe you commented on one of my videos a week or two ago, but it's been a while. So good to have you. Jordan Love coming for y'all's asses next week. I will break. So at the end of this, if you guys want a full rundown of the show, go to the description and it's going to give you a full rundown of what I'll be covering. I'll be breaking down all 4 matchups, all 4 wild card weekend, not wild card, divisional round. I'll be breaking down all the 4 matchups in the divisional round in just a second. So I will be getting to kind of some of the keys with the Packers versus 49ers. 42-10. Brett Boyle. Never seen you in here before, so welcome, Brett Boyle. What do you mean by that? 42-10. Was that... Wait, that was the score of the Packers versus Cowboys at some point in that game. Was it 42-10? Because wasn't the ending of that game like 48-32? I can't really remember at the moment, but Dak is trash. Yeah. Dak, I'm going to use proper English here. Dak isn't a top 10 quarterback when he... Hold on. Dak ain't top 10 when he can't win shit in the postseason. Okay. I knew there would be some blowback in these comments. 52 of the players on the 49ers 53-man roster are healthy. Yeah. Yeah, that's why I'm going to get to this later on in the show, but that's why I don't think the Niners lose this game. I really, really don't. So they were praising McCarthy when they were 12-5, though. LOL. True. That is true. I think McCarthy hasn't been good in so long. And also, if you're looking at who the Cowboys played this year, I mean, there was not a ton of good games. I was mentioning the Jets' good defense, but you've also got to realize the Jets were playing with Zach Wilson. And so that's an easy win. I mean, both times the Cowboys played, the Cowboys lost once to the Eagles, and the second time the Cowboys beat the Eagles were in shambles already. I'm just running through a list of playoffs teams that the Cowboys actually played. The Bills, they got blown out by. The Dolphins, they lost to. The 49ers, we all know what happened in that game. So, yeah. Yeah. That was Niners score, I think. Oh, 42-10 was the Niners score. Oh, against the Cowboys. Right. Yeah. Packers was 48-32. Okay. Brett Boyle, I posted that when you were referring to the Cowboys game. 42-10 was the final score. Okay, thank you. But let's get to the next topic. Let's kind of after this next topic, I will get to a preview of all 4 games this next week. But first, we have to kind of get to an Eagles topic because I think it's kind of hilarious. And my brothers, if you've been following the show for a while, my brothers are Eagles fans. And my brother, Joseph, actually, he's been on the show quite a few times, actually went to the Eagles versus Tampa Bay Buccaneers game. And apparently the Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans were terrible, like just really bad to be around, like cussing my brother out and everything. So I was calling my brother after the game ended to gloat because the Eagles had just lost. But then he started telling me about some of his experiences with Buccaneers fans, and I was like, okay, I better be a little bit less harsh on my brother. But I'm not gonna be. I'm not gonna be. I'm not gonna be light on the Eagles right now because I think it's hilarious how they lost. And I'm not gonna be biased, but I'm just gonna bring up straight facts. So hold your horses. I'm just trying to pull up my notes that I was watching film today while my mom was shopping, and so I was making notes on my phone. And so I was kind of rewatching this Eagles versus Buccaneers game over again, and I'm going to try my best to explain why the Eagles absolutely collapsed. And I think a lot of what happened to the Eagles in this game versus the Buccaneers was why I think these problems that came up in this game versus the Buccaneers was a lot of what they had been dealing with for the last 7 weeks or 6 weeks, whatever it was. So I don't know. Off the bat, Eagles D-line, I don't think the Eagles D-line is what it used to be. Last year, the Eagles D-line was dominant. This year, it's like in this game, especially against the Buccaneers, if you go back and watch, I mean, the first few drives, Baker was doing play action. Like they did. I don't know. I don't know the exact numbers of how many times the Buccaneers did play action with Baker Mayfield, but it was a lot. And you guys, all Niners fans, know that the reason why the 49ers got Brock Purdy injured last year in the NFC Championship game was because they did play action against the Eagles. Last year, it was really hard to do play action against the Eagles defensive line because they'd usually sack you because their defensive line was really good. But now it's like they were letting the Buccaneers just run all over them with the play action. So that was just right off the bat. Buccaneers were shredding them with play action, and there didn't seem to be a lot of pressure on Baker Mayfield. He had a lot of time in this game. I mean, and if you look at the numbers of the Buccaneers offensive line and how good their offensive line is, it's not even that good. So it's like, first thing, I think the Eagles should have blitzed maybe a little bit more. But at the same time, it's like if you're the Eagles and you blitz to create more pressure on the quarterback, we've seen for the weeks previous and this week, the Eagles cornerbacks cannot cover long enough. Like if you blitz, let's say 6 guys on Baker Mayfield to get pressure and you leave 5 guys back in coverage, the Buccaneers would have cooked them because the Eagles cornerbacks and linebackers cannot cover one-on-one. And so you can't really blitz the quarterback if you're the Eagles because it's most likely going to be giving up a big play to Buccaneers receivers because your guys in the secondary, the Eagles guys in the secondary, can't cover one-on-one. And I actually have a picture here on my phone that I took a screenshot. The Eagles in this game were playing very padded zone coverage. I don't know if you guys can see that, but look how much room the Eagles cornerbacks, this was basically all game. Look how much room the Eagles cornerbacks were giving to Buccaneers receivers when the play starts. It was crazy. So they're playing very padded zone coverage is what I saw. And it was allowing a lot of spaces given to the receivers before the snap. And that's the reason. And so the nice thing about playing padded zone coverage and rushing for receivers is you have to trust that your linebackers and cornerbacks can tackle, because the thing with playing padded zone coverage is it gives up a lot of short throws. And so if it's giving up a lot of short throws, then you have to rely on your secondary linebackers and cornerbacks to tackle in the second level. But the problem is the Eagles, I don't know how many missed tackles they had last night versus the Buccaneers. Man, oh man, I'm getting kind of heated over this. I don't know how many missed tackles the Eagles cornerbacks and linebackers had yesterday, but there was a lot. And so what they were doing is they were playing, like I said, padded zone coverage, and the Buccaneers were just gashing them over the middle of the field, and the Eagles weren't tackling and giving up huge gains the whole entire game. The whole entire game. I'll give you an example. First Buccaneers TD, their receiver, Moore, caught it about 15 to 20 yards downfield, bounced off, 5 tackles, took the ball another 30 yards. It was like a 20-yard pass completion downfield to Moore, the Buccaneers receiver. This was the first Buccaneers TD. Moore, the receiver, bounced off about 5 Eagles players and walks into the end zone. And so that's kind of the undisciplined nature of the Eagles secondary. It's terrible. It's really atrocious to watch. It really is. I'm sorry that I went on that long rant, but it was something else to watch yesterday. I don't know if you guys understood me there, but and then you flip to the offensive side of the ball, and there was no help for Jalen Hurts. The Bucs realized that obviously the Eagles were missing A.J. Brown in this game. So the Bucs realized that they were missing A.J. Brown and said, the Eagles really only have one player that can win one-on-one, and that's Devontae Smith. And so we're just going to throw blitz after blitz after blitz. And that's what the Buccaneers did. And none of the Eagles' complexity of their play calls weren't getting guys open quick enough. And so because the receivers weren't getting open quick enough, Jalen Hurts was just getting pressured all night. And he is slightly injured, so he wasn't really scrambling out of the pocket. He was getting sacked. He was getting hit a lot, and he could do nothing about it. The Eagles' play calling was not giving him any help. They weren't scheming any guys open. There was no receivers that were winning one-on-one. So, I mean, just an absolute atrocious performance. And especially, the offense, to show you guys how bad the offense was really in this game, the defense at one point stopped the Bucs 3 or 4 straight times in the middle of this game. Between the second and third quarter, I believe the Eagles defense stopped the Bucs 3 straight times. But the Eagle, and it was 16-9. The Eagles, I think, had 3 chances to tie it up, the game, and they didn't convert on any of those chances. They didn't score on any of those chances. So my focus, now that I've kind of broken down the game a little bit, my focus kind of shifts to the offseason. Obviously, Jason Kelce, as you guys all know, he retired. So that's a big question mark. Who replaces Jason Kelce as the Eagles' next center? And I think Landon Dickerson would. But if Landon Dickerson is replacing him as center, then you have to find a new starting guard, I believe it is. So, and again, the Eagles have a lot of depth on the offensive line, so that's not a huge concern for me. But that's a question mark. And also, you're also asking Landon Dickerson to come in and play at an all-time great level like Jason Kelce had been. Because Jason Kelce is one of the best centers of this generation. One more thing before I get off of this game is to just show you how bad this Eagles offense was all night. DeAndre Swift had his best run of 14 yards, I believe it was, at the end of the third quarter. That was his longest run. And it came at the end of the third quarter. So, but as I said before, we need to switch our focus as the Eagles towards the offseason. And I made a list of maybe position groups that they need to address. Number 1, cornerback. Get rid of Bradbury. Maybe don't get rid of Darius Slay, but 100% get rid of Bradbury. Cornerback, they need to address linebacker. That's the number 1 thing. Wide receiver, need to address wide receiver. I would even get another running back as the Eagles. Safety, couldn't hurt. I mean, they're pretty bad too. Although Sidney Brown, their cornerback that they drafted out of Illinois, is actually pretty good. So I don't know. Safety is another one. But so those are kind of, and then I have here on my phone the Eagles free agent list, which it's quite a long list. I don't know if I still have it here. Do I still have the Eagles free agent list? Oh, here we go. Eagles free agent list. So Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Marcus Mariota. He's not super important. DeAndre Swift, Boston Scott. So there are two top running backs. Boston Scott, DeAndre Swift, both free agents. Zach Cunningham, their inside linebacker. I don't think they bring him back because he kind of sucked. Shaquille Leonard, the guy from the Colts, Shaq Leonard. Iowasua Opeta, guard. Don't know who he is. He might be good. Nicholas Moreau, outside linebacker. He was pretty bad this year too. That whole linebacking core. I'm trying to think of anyone else that even saw the field for the Eagles as a free agent. So those are kind of the key ones. But, I mean, they're going to be missing Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham. I mean, they might need to work. Now, I guess they have Nolan Smith to kind of replace those guys. But they have a long free agent list this next year, losing a lot of guys. So I wouldn't be surprised. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. This was a long topic, but this is, I think, a loaded topic about what the Eagles are going to do in the offseason. I want to know what you guys think, though. Do you think they fire Nick Sirianni? I don't know. They very well might. I apologize, guys. I kind of didn't answer your comments for a while. I live in Pennsylvania. It's been great to see the Eagles fans cry. LOL. They really fell apart. Yeah, fell apart's an understatement. Let's just say how do I say this without being gruesome? I don't even know. I don't want to say anything like super gruesome. So yeah, they really did fall apart. Baker is about to get his damn bag after this too. He is. And I will talk after I'm done reading these comments. I will talk about how I wouldn't be surprised if the Bucs upset the Lions this week. Do you think they will fire Sirianni? Okay. I want to know what you guys think because this is a loaded question. And I'm going to maybe get an Eagles fan to come on the show and I'm going to try to see what he thinks. But if I were them, I would. I don't think they will, though. I think they're going to give him one more chance. And let's see what he can do next season. I wouldn't be surprised if they do, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they don't. So we'll see. Let's see here. So let's get to kind of the short preview and prediction to all 4 games this week. I'm going to try to run through these 4 games pretty fast. I'll maybe make some more breakdowns as the week goes on these games. But I had a ton of topics lined out today. And so I was just trying not to go too much into depth on all of them. But the thing is we are almost 45 minutes through the show. So much for me not going into depth on all of my topics because I've gone into great depth on all of them. Let's see here. So I guess we have to start with Texans-Ravens, correct? Yes, sir. That's the first game. Philip Seller says, I don't pay close attention to know, but all my friends that like them want it to happen, LOL. I don't see why they would fire, though. Yeah, a year removed from a Super Bowl, too? That's bold. That's bold. But, I mean, obviously, he has to make personnel changes on the coaching staff, for sure. I expect there to be a very new coaching staff next year on the Eagles coaching staff. So, but let's get to the preview to all 4 games this week. Texans versus Ravens. Let's start off with this one. I'm going to predict this game. I'm going to preview it. I think it'll be close, but I just don't see a way how the Texans come out of this game alive. And the reason why I say that is the talent on the Ravens defense, that's kind of an overstatement. Alive is an overstatement, but I don't see how they come out of this game and win, is what I'm trying to say. I mean, the talent on the Ravens defense, you have Hamilton, you have obviously the defensive line is very good. You saw what they did to Brock Purdy and the Niners, and the only way the Texans and CJ Stroud offensively, the only way they have a chance against the Ravens defense is by running the ball, because I think the Niners would have been a lot closer in week, what was it, 14, 15? I think they would have been a lot closer in week, it was week 16. Yeah. I think the Niners would have been a lot closer in week 16 if they would have ran the ball more. I think the only way you even have a chance of winning this game on offense is if the Texans just run the ball religiously. If you guys look at PFF, I don't have the numbers pulled up in front of me, but if you look at PFF, the Ravens aren't their defensive line at least isn't like super good at stopping the run. So running the ball, and then Nico Collins. Nico Collins is definitely the X factor in this game. He's going to be a problem. He's one of the top receivers in the AFC this year. He's going to be a problem for the Ravens. But if you look on the defensive side of the ball, can the Texans stop the run versus the Ravens gauntlet of just, they have obviously Lamar Jackson. They have Gus Edwards, who's pretty good. They have, I believe, Hill, whatever his name is. And so they have a good run game. And the big question, can the Texans stop the run? Their defensive tackle, Malik Collins, has a 46.1 run defensive grade, which is really bad. Their other defensive tackle, Jerry Hughes, 58.4 run defense grade. So I don't think they're going to be able to really stop the run as much. And that's kind of been a big problem of theirs, is stopping the run. Obviously, versus Jonathan, I'm going to bring up a elite running back that the Texans have faced versus Jonathan Taylor in week 18. He had 30 carries for 188 yards, Jonathan Taylor, against this Texans defense. 6.3 yards per carry, 1 TD. So he went crazy against this Texans defense. So I just think the matchup-wise, especially for the Texans defense, is not good because the Ravens can run the ball and the Texans can't necessarily stop the run. And their defense isn't necessarily that good. And we all know if this game comes to a shootout, I'm going to pick the Ravens. So Ravens, I think, get this one done 30-20. It could be more of a blowout, but I'm going to keep it respectable and say that the Texans hang around for a while and they eventually lose 30-20. And Ravens advance to the AFC Championship game. So that's the first matchup. Now, Philip Sellers, if you're still watching this, I am now breaking down the 49ers versus Packers matchup briefly. I think, so I guess let's get to that game. Linebackers, on a big weakness that I see on the Packers defense is their run defense, especially their linebackers. I'm trying to look here at my exact numbers on this defense for their linebackers. So we have Quay Walker, and I was looking up how good he is at stopping the run. His run defense grade is 66.2, which is 53rd among all linebackers, so not great. His overall grade is 60.2, which is 64th among all linebackers, also not great. And then we have Devondre Campbell. His run defense grade is 68.4, which isn't bad in PFF. So, I don't know. I think anyone that watches the Packers knows that their defense isn't super good. Now, it's come up clutch the last few weeks, but you also look at how many points they've given up to opponents during the regular season. They gave up 30 to the Panthers, 34 to the Buccaneers, 24 to the Giants, 22 to the Lions. I'm just looking at some of the games that they played during the season. And obviously a lot of Packers fans that you see and watch say that Joe Barry, or whatever his name is, the defensive coordinator, probably needs to go after this season. Might have saved his job now that they're in the second round of the playoffs, but he needs to go. So because the Packers cannot really stop the run, that's a bad matchup automatically because the Niners have Christian McCaffrey. Bad matchup. And so if the Niners can control the game through the run, obviously it's in San Francisco. The 49ers, maybe there is an argument to be made that maybe the 49ers kind of are a little bit rusty. But at the same time, the 49ers are a veteran team. And they've been in these moments before. They know how to prepare for these moments. And so I just find it very hard to believe that the Niners are going to be rusty. And I think they're going to be able to run the ball and control the game that way. And yes, Jordan Love is good. But, I mean, the Niners defense will at least get a few stops on Jordan Love. And I think that's all it takes. Because against bad defenses, the 49ers have beaten up against teams with bad defenses. And if the Niners are scoring 27 plus points in a game, it's going to be very hard to beat this team. So I'm going to say Niners get this one, not even because I'm biased. I just think the Packers, what they've done this year is impressive. They're a young team, but the fact that, what's his name? Brett Boyle up here said a while ago, he said, I don't know if you're still in the chat, but he said, hold on a second. 52 of the 49ers 53-man roster are healthy. So that's a good point. The Niners are healthy. They have a lot of veterans on the team, and I just don't know how they lose. So I'm going to pick them to win 38-17. It could be closer, but I think the way the 49ers are playing right now, I think it's going to be 38-17. Philip Sellers says, I got Texans. I believe in Stroud magic, baby. LOL. That's a homer pick, man. I don't know about that one. The Ravens are, unless something wild happens, the Ravens are playing at another level right now. And I want to see Love and Stroud in the Super Bowl. That would be something else for sure. Yeah. Our defense will do just enough to get a takeaway, and Love gonna pile up those points again. No one picked us to beat the Cowboys either way. No one picked us to beat the Cowboys either. Just wait. Yeah, but we're not the Cowboys, man. First thing, the Cowboys didn't run the ball in that game to start. They came in with the wrong game plan. Wrong game plan. They didn't run the ball, and they should have more to start that game. I also just believe in Kyle Shanahan a lot more than I believe in Mike McCarthy. Are you I think Kyle Shanahan's on another level compared to Mike McCarthy, man. So, but let's get to what next matchup do we have next? Buccaneers versus Lions. I had to look up a little bit more of stats for this game because I'm not super in tune to either of these teams. And so, I was kind of trying to do my due diligence and kind of trying to go back and look up stats. The Buccaneers offensive line hasn't been great a lot of the year, but at the same time, they played really, really, really well against the Eagles defensive line last week. So the Buccaneers offensive line is pretty good, actually. And if they were able to do well against the Eagles defensive line last week, I think they'll be able to do pretty well against the Lions defensive line this week. Lions did not get a lot of pressure on the Rams. There were some key plays. That, yes, Aiden Hutchinson did get pressure. For example, 3rd and 4 with 5 minutes left in the game, Aiden Hutchinson gets a holding call called on him by the Rams offensive lineman. on Havenstein, and that affected it majorly because it took the Rams, I believe, out of field goal range. It was 3rd and 4. It ended up being like 3rd and 14. So Aiden Hutchinson at parts in this game was very key, but for the most part, didn't generate a ton of pressure. This Lions defensive line, and we know that their defense isn't great to start. So I think that favors that kind of goes in the favor of the Bucs offense. I think the Bucs offense is very, very underrated. If you're looking at sheer talent, I mean, the receiving core, right? They have Cade Otton. Well, he's a tight end, but great receiver still. They have Cade Otton, their tight end. Last game, 8 receptions, 89 yards. They have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Palmer, I believe, Trey Palmer. They have Moore. Can't remember his first name, but Moore. So you have a good receiving core, and the Lions don't necessarily have a great defensive line. So how do you generate pressure on Baker Mayfield? Well, by blitzing him. The problem with blitzing Baker Mayfield is he can just check it down to Cade Otton or throw a bunch of short throws. So I don't see I think this is going to be a high scoring game, and I think the Lions are going to give up a lot of points in this game. But on the flip side, you're going to be able to run the ball on the Buccaneers defense. They have 2 not so good defensive tackles. Let's see if I have the actual numbers pulled up here. I think I pulled it up on my phone. Let's see here. Is this? Yeah. So their defensive tackles, they have Kalijah Cansey, who has struggled this year. Has a run defense grade of 30.1, which is almost last out of any defensive tackle in the league. So a terrible run defense grade. And then you have the other defensive tackle, Logan Hall, has a 45.1 defensive grade, which is almost last among all defensive tackles as well. So you're going to be able to run the ball against this Buccaneers D-line. And that bodes well for the Lions because they have 2 very talented running backs in Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. And if the Lions can control the clock that way, the Lions offense, I definitely think will roll. I think this game is going to be a shootout. And I do believe the Lions end up getting this one done just because it is in Ford Field. The Lions offense is really good. They can run the ball. They can control the clock. 31-27. Lions get this one done in a close one. But I would not be surprised. I think of all the games this weekend that can go be upset, like of all the games where teams can be upset, I think the Lions are the top team here to be upset this weekend. So that's kind of the way I see it. But let's get to Chiefs versus Bills. I'm going to go ahead and say the Bills win this one. And not because I'm just super biased, which I'm not, honestly. But first thing, it's in Buffalo. Really cold weather. The Bills versus Steelers game last week got moved to a different day because the snow was so bad. It's going to be similar to that this week. So it's in Buffalo. The fan base is going to be crazy. And if you're looking at the hotness of these 2 teams, I'd say the Bills are hotter than the Chiefs. Yes, the Chiefs beat the Dolphins, but I think the Chiefs match up really well versus the Dolphins. And on the flip side, I think the Bills are going to be looking for revenge. I think anytime it's really hard to win in Buffalo in general, but also the Bills now, for really the last month or so, they've really found a way to run the ball consistently well. And that was something that that was the biggest knock on them for years. They can't run the ball. Well, they can now run the ball. And you bet that I am willing to bet that the Bills are going to run over the Chiefs this week with running the ball. And I think it really, since it's going to be so cold, it really just comes down to who runs the ball better. And I think the Bills have a better run game with Josh Allen and James Cook. So I think the Chiefs get this one done. I think it's going to be another classic, just like the last Bills versus Chiefs game was in the playoffs a few years ago. I think this one's going to go 23-21. Bills get this one done. So those are kind of my predictions and breakdowns of all 4 games this week. I'm trying to think, do I have any more topics? Otherwise, I'm out of here. Let's see here. Our defense will do just enough to get a takeaway, and Love gonna... Oh, okay, I already read that one. Dang, I can't believe I've been talking for an hour. That's crazy. Well, I do want to quickly touch this topic. If McCarthy is fired, does that mean that Mike McDaniels and Tua Tagovailoa are gone as well? I don't know what you guys think on this one, but the reason why I'm comparing these two situations is McCarthy has lost the last few years in the playoffs. And he's been a very regular season head coach. Builds up hype in the regular season, loses in the playoffs. Mike McDaniels for the Dolphins, kind of similar. Builds up hype in the regular season for the first half of the year. Second half of the year, loses that hype. And now for the past 2 years, has lost in the first round. Now, Tua was injured last year in the first round of the playoffs. That's why they lost. But I can't help but wonder if Mike McDaniel's situation is kind of similar to Mike McCarthy's situation. I think Tua Tagovailoa is gone. I do think so. I think they move on. I think Mike McDaniel is going to be given one more chance because he did have a lot of injuries this year. And so you can blame it on the injuries. You can blame it on maybe your quarterback isn't that great if you're Mike McDaniels. So I think here you're not going to get rid of both McDaniels and Tua, but I think McDaniels is going to use Tua as a scapegoat. I definitely think Tua is going to be out, but I think McDaniel stays. But I think McDaniel's on the hot seat next year for the Dolphins, especially how this season ended. So let's see here. One other thing, there was in the rundown, there was a few other topics that I did not get to. I will get to it. So guys, later on this week, either maybe Thursday, it's either going to be Thursday or Saturday, I'm going to have another show. So all the topics that I did not cover today, I'll cover it on that show, as well as that show is going to be more 49ers oriented. So I apologize for all my Niners fans that maybe my live today wasn't as Niners oriented, but it will be next live show. So most likely look forward to on Saturday, look forward to a more Niners oriented show. I also do want to bring up a few things before I get out of here. First, let's see here. I do want to thank everyone because last 2.5 weeks haven't really been posting a lot, but still have been getting the views on my videos that I've still been getting the views on my videos that have been boosting my channel a lot. And so that kind of just reminds me of the continued support that all of you guys show me. And so I thank you everyone for the continued support. We cannot, I honestly would not be doing this if I didn't have people that were, telling me in the comments how, I wouldn't be doing this. Basically, to sum it up, I wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for you guys, because definitely it makes my content creation a little bit more fun to see that people are enjoying it. So definitely thank you everyone for the not StreamYard, for the continued support. And if you guys want to do content like this, like I'm doing, if you guys are thinking about getting into content creation, thinking about going live, then do that with StreamYard. StreamYard is a live streaming platform, and you can also, if you get it's totally free starting out. It's a live streaming platform, totally free, and you can basically stream your videos, your lives to YouTube through StreamYard. There's a lot of other tools that are really handy, that are really cool on StreamYard. So if you're thinking about getting into content creation, I would highly recommend that. And if you guys want to, not only do they have lives, but they also have videos that you can pre-record. And by doing that, you would have to get a higher plan, the basic. You'd have to. It doesn't. There's a certain point where it doesn't become free anymore. But StreamYard is just, especially for beginner StreamYard users, for people that haven't done tons of, like, it's just, the platform is super. To sum it up, the platform is super easy to use. It's super user friendly. And so if you guys want $10 off of your first purchase, then click the link in the description. You'll get $10 off of your first purchase, your first plan, basically. So, guys, have a good rest of your evening. I've been live now for over an hour, and you guys have had to sit here and listen to me talk. So I thank you everyone for the continued support. I know that you guys are probably missing the guests. I will start to bring more guests back on the show, but I'm trying right now to cultivate my sound, or like my talking, my speaking. I'm trying to cultivate that a little bit more than getting guests on the show. So definitely big guests coming, but thank you for listening to me talk, and I will see you guys. Have a good rest of your evening, everyone, and go Niners. Hopefully they beat the Packers this weekend. Go Niners.